"Get out, you lowlife," my father yelled when I revealed my company was worth $24 million. I walked out and cut him off forever. I moved into my beach house the next day, so this will most likely be a lengthy post, but I need to get everything off my chest. I apologize in advance for any mistakes. I'm still quite emotional over all of this. Growing up in Columbus, Ohio, I was always the odd one in my family. While my siblings Michael and Lauren were doing the typical thing, getting high grades, preparing for college and following all the rules, I was out there trying to get money any way I could. I mean, when I was 11 years old, I had an exquisite lemonade stand that put other youngsters to shame. I had several tastes, loyalty punch cards, and the full 9 yards. Other kids thought I was crazy, but I made good money for an 11-year-old. By the age of 14, I was repairing people's computers for $22 per hour, while the local repair business charged $80. Everything I know I learned on YouTube and on forums. Spent hours solving issues that certified experts couldn't solve. My parents thought it was charming, but also rather frightening. Dad would often say things like, "Claire needs to focus on her real studies. These little games won't pay the bills when she grows up." My father, Robert, had been an accountant at the same monotonous business for around 28 years. Super conventional guy, believed that schooling was the only way to achieve in life. My mother, Ellen, was an elementary school teacher who was normally silent and agreed with anything my father said. They had a picture of success that included high grades, college, a nice career, and a wonderful life. Anything outside of that formula was considered failure to them. Michael and Lauren ate it up. They were the perfect children. Honor roll, student council, and all that college prep stuff. I attempted to care about that, but it seemed futile. While others joined groups to appear good on applications, I was acquiring real-world business skills, training myself web design, and reading any business book I could get my hands on. In high school, I created an internet store that sold bespoke phone covers. This was before everyone else started doing it, so I was ahead of the game. I created them myself, located manufacturers, managed customer service, sent returns, and basically operated an entire business out of my bedroom, earning about $2,400 before graduation, which felt like $1 million to me at the time. However, my parents were unable to look past the fact that my GPA was not perfect. They continued pushing me toward college, saying things like, "You can do your little computer hobby on the side, but you need a real education first." It was really irritating since I was already learning more from operating my business than any of my peers were getting in their AP classes. The hardest part was the family dinners. Michael would discuss his internship at an accounting business. Lauren would gloat about making the dean's list. And when I told Dad about my business, he would merely nod and change the conversation, as if my accomplishments were meaningless since they occurred outside of the classroom. Looking back, I believe they were terrified for me. They saw success in one manner, and I was entirely off script. But at the time it felt like they thought I was stupid or lazy, even though I worked more than anybody else in the family. To maintain the peace, I promised to attend community college. A huge error. I lasted 2 semesters before I wanted to scream. Business classes were taught by academics who had never ran a business. They just read from textbooks about notions that contradicted what I was seeing in the actual world. Meanwhile, I was anxious to get started on my actual company ideas. When I told my parents I was quitting out, World War II erupted in our home. The dispute lasted 5 whole days. Dad was enraged, his face glowing red, ranting about how I was wasting my life. And no child of mine will be a college dropout earning minimum wage jobs indefinitely. Mother wept a lot. Lauren and Michael looked at me as if I'd lost my mind, but I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like I was wasting time sitting in courses when I could be out there creating something. So, at the age of 20, I packed my belongings and moved out with $2,500 saved from my many side hustles. I'm not going to lie. The first few months were tough. I discovered this little studio apartment in an area where you absolutely did not wash laundry after dark. I survived on ramen, noodles, and whatever was on sale at the grocery store. I worked 16-hour days attempting to establish my e-commerce platform as my parents continued phoning to see when I'd come to my senses and return to school. My first 3 business ventures failed terribly. The first was a dropshipping venture that went wrong when suppliers gave out defective items and buyers demanded refunds that I couldn't pay. I lost almost $950 on that one. Then I tried social media management for small businesses, but I was so anxious to get clients that I underpriced everything and ended up working 20 hours a day for almost nothing. I burned out quickly and lost the majority of my clients because I couldn't keep up. The third effort was creating handcrafted jewelry. It turns out that I am not an artist at all. Made some great products, but couldn't find out how to expand beyond selling at local markets. Each failure suffered, but I was learning things that business schools don't teach, such as how to deal with challenging suppliers, how to correctly price services, and how to manage cash flow when you're just scraping by. My family's reaction to these failures was not positive. Dad would call and leave voicemails like, "This is exactly what we warned you about. It's not too late to go back to school." Michael would text me job listings for entry-level positions with, "Thought you might be interested" messages. They meant well, I believe, but it felt like they were just waiting for me to fail, so they could say, "I told you so." The turning moment occurred when I met Catherine at a networking event. She was approximately 18 years older than me, had started and sold several firms, and for some reason wanted to assist me out. She became the mentor I so needed, someone who understood what I was attempting to do and didn't think I was insane for not taking the standard road. Claire once told me over coffee that education may take many forms. Some of the most successful people I know learnt via experience rather than sitting in a classroom. For the first time in years, someone validated my decisions, rather than questioned them. With Catherine's help, I finally got my act together. At 23, I founded H. Heartland Manufactured, an e-commerce platform that connects small American manufacturers with buyers looking for locally manufactured items. The time was ideal since there was a major push to encourage small businesses and made-in-America products. I started small, with only 32 artisan partners across 3 states. My flat was roughly equal parts office and residential area. I had a futon that worked as both a sofa and a bed. My workstation and printer took up the most of the area. I worked from 5:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. Every day I handle everything myself. Website development, customer support, bookkeeping and marketing, you name it. The breakthrough came around 9 months later, when a famous lifestyle blogger featured one of our partners. Orders began rushing in, totally overwhelming our basic systems. I worked for 64 hours straight, attempting to fulfill orders and modernize our website so it wouldn't crash. That weekend, I earned $12,000 in income, more than I had ever seen in my bank account. I was so delighted that I contacted my folks to tell them. Dad responded, "That's lovely, honey, but it's probably just temporary. You may always return to college after this thing has run its course." His comments stung, but they also ignited a fire inside me. I was determined to show him incorrect, not through arguments, but via outcomes. The subsequent 6 years were crazy. Heartland Made expanded much above my first expectations. We grew from 32 partners to more than 460 manufacturers and artisans in 48 states. Every step of development presented new problems that nearly broke me, but also taught me lessons that no college course could. When our servers broke after a large Black Friday campaign, I remained up for 52 hours straight, working with engineers to bring everything back online, while personally responding to hundreds of irate customer emails. When a larger rival attempted to lure our top sellers by offering higher commission rates, I went across the nation, visiting with each partner in person, establishing ties and enhancing our terms. The most challenging phase was year 3, when we were growing too quickly for our cash flow, had inventory requirements that exceeded sales, and I spent 4 months without paying myself a wage. I relocated to an even smaller apartment, ate only rice and beans, and negotiated payment conditions with suppliers while trying not to reveal how near we were to bankruptcy. But we pulled it through, and those tight months taught me financial discipline, which helped me as the firm grew. By year 4, we had generated $1.3 million in yearly income. After everyone left, I celebrated alone in my office with a single glass of champagne, reflecting on how far I'd come from my first unsuccessful dropshipping firm. Here's the problem though. I kept my success concealed from my family. They knew I had an internet business that was performing well, but I downplayed everything. Part of me feared they'd find a way to downplay it, and part of me was still wanting their acceptance in this strange manner. So, when my family needed assistance, I began assisting them discreetly. When Mom was diagnosed with breast cancer in year 5 and faced $82,000 in medical expenditures that were not covered by insurance, I paid everything straight to the hospital and experts. Dad stated an insurance payout that had spared them from debt, but he didn't know where the money came from. Michael wanted assistance with a down payment for his first home. He fell $45,000 short of the bank's requirements. I created a fictitious family loan through a different account, making it appear to be from a distant uncle. He accepted the money gladly, but made comments about how I needed to acquire a real job with benefits. Lauren's fantasy wedding was about to be wrecked when her fiancé lost his job 7 months before the event. I paid the $55,000 gap for the venue and caterers. She knew the money came from me, but she played it down at family gatherings, referring to it as assistance from my little online firm, which was having a successful year. The disconnection was awful. By day, I led strategy meetings for a multi-million-dollar corporation, making choices that impacted hundreds of partner companies. By night, I was receiving texts from family members who treated me as if I had dropped out of college and gotten fortunate with some online thing. But I kept assisting because I cared about them, even if they didn't comprehend or respect what I had created. I assumed they'd ultimately see that my route had worked out, and that education wasn't the only road to success. I was mistaken about that. Dad's 60th birthday was approaching, and I made a choice that I hoped would finally alter everything. I was weary of disguising my accomplishment and being viewed as the family's failure. I purchased him a big gift, a fully loaded retirement account, and promised to be open about my business for the first time. I spent weeks practicing what I was going to say. I was not attempting to boast or show off. I simply wanted them to realize that my alternative route had worked out, and perhaps even gain some of the praise I'd been seeking my whole life. The evening began normally enough. Same house, furnishings, and family dynamics. Michael arrived in his business casual attire with his wife, bragging about his new promotion. Lauren was talking about perhaps becoming a junior partner at her accounting business. When Eric discussed e-commerce development, Michael swiftly shifted the conversation to his child's minor league numbers. Throughout the pre-dinner chat, no one asked me any questions about my life or career. I waded through conversations about neighborhood gossip, Michael's children's accomplishments, and Lauren's travel plans. Finally, during dessert, I realized it was time. "Dad, Mom, everyone," I said, my heart pounding despite my attempts to remain calm. I wanted to share some news regarding my firm. Heartland Made has lately been valued at $24 million. We've had multiple purchase proposals, and I've been featured in Business Insider and Entrepreneur magazines. The hush that followed seemed to last forever. Mom froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Lauren and Eric exchanged looks. Michael simply gazed at me. Dad was the first to speak, and he used a contemptuous tone. "What does that imply, Claire? These online enterprises utilize all kinds of crazy arithmetic to come up with these valuations." I remained calm and explained how business appraisals operate. I discussed our income streams and projected growth, as well as our 44-person office and collaborations with over 460 manufacturers. Michael interrupted me before I could continue. "So you were lucky with this internet stuff. That's wonderful. But some of us have been developing genuine jobs with true qualifications." He stressed qualifications, appealing to his wife for support. "It's not luck," I said, attempting to remain cool. "It's 8 years of working 16-hour days, solving complex problems, and building something meaningful. We've helped save dozens of American manufacturing businesses that were about to close." Eventually, Mom spoke out. "That sounds impressive, darling. I still wish you had completed your degree. Even in this profession, knowledge is essential." I was becoming agitated, but I pressed on. "Actually, I brought something for Dad." I gave him the envelope containing the retirement account paperwork. "I wanted to make sure you both have a comfortable retirement." Instead of thankfulness, Dad's face turned furious as he comprehended what he was seeing. "What is this supposed to be? Some form of charity? We didn't raise you to treat money as if you were superior to everyone else." "That was not my aim," I clarified. "I just wanted to help the same way I helped with Mom's medical bills, Michael's house down payment, and Lauren's wedding." That is when everything detonated. All three of them snapped simultaneously. My covert financial assistance was abruptly revealed. Dad spat. "That was all you?" Lauren seemed humiliated. Michael's expression became unpleasant. Mom only looked puzzled. "You've been paying for things behind our backs." Dad's voice grew stronger. "Playing the big shot with your internet money." "I was just trying to help," I said, my voice lowering despite myself. "I never wanted recognition." Michael leaped in. "They made us feel like charity cases. Some of us work legitimate professions with genuine degrees rather than becoming wealthy quick with internet scams." "It's not a scheme," I protested. "I established a respectable firm that assists American manufacturers in reaching their target audience. We have dozens of employees with decent pay and benefits." Dad got up, his napkin sliding on the floor. "You drop out of college against our advice, disappear into your little internet world, and now you come back throwing money around like you have all the answers." "That's not what I'm doing," I argued, trying to keep my voice calm. "Do you think your money makes you successful?" he said, his voice growing louder. "You're still illiterate garbage who got fortunate. Anyone can get lucky." The room fell quiet. Mom gasped gently and offered nothing in my defense. Michael gazed down at his plate with a small smile. Lauren was caught between shame and consent. "Robert?" Mom eventually said. But it was too late and too quiet to matter. "No." Dad said, agitated now. I've always worked the proper way. I received an education, established a good profession, and raised a family. I will not be shown up in my own home by my dropout daughter. I rose up slowly, gathered my bag. I should go. Yes, you should, Dad said. Get out of my house, you lowlife. Your money does not make you a member of this family. We have standards. Each syllable struck like a physical blow. I looked around the table, looking for any allies or signs of support. There was none. Michael would not even make eye contact. Lauren gazed at her plate. Mom just sat there, shocked. Happy birthday, Dad, I replied gently, stepping toward the door with all the dignity I had left. Nobody followed me outside. Nobody called after me. I got into my car with shaky hands and could hardly hold the steering wheel. As I drove away from the house where I grew up, I felt something essential had broken and could never be repaired. My trip back to the hotel was a jumble of lamps and tears. I had to pull over twice because I couldn't see the road anymore. The irony was not lost on me. I had a multi-million-dollar firm, but I was spending the night at a hotel in my hometown because my family's home was no longer available to me. In that antiseptic hotel room, I kept replaying the evening. Had I been too proud or forward? Should I have handled things differently? The financial assistance I had provided now seemed like a desperate attempt to purchase acceptance. I'd never obtain it via accomplishments alone. I took out my laptop and began recording every penny I had given my family over the years. The list was astonishing. $82,000 for Mom's cancer treatment, $135,000 for Michael's house, including later requested renovations, $55,000 for Lauren's wedding and honeymoon, $24,000 for Dad's car repair, $38,000 for Mom's kitchen renovation, and countless other expenses, Christmas gifts, birthday presents, and emergencies. Nearly $335,000 in all, money I never expected to get but gave freely out of love for a family who had just called me garbage. Around midnight, Lauren wrote, Dad is still unhappy, but he will get over it. You know how he reacts when his authority is challenged. There was no apology, no admission of how horrific the entire situation was, just an expectation that I would accept the abuse and pretend nothing happened. I did not react. Instead, I phoned a therapist in the city where I reside. Dr. Miller agreed to do an emergency virtual session the next day. Family wounds cut deepest, she noted after I told her everything, especially when they target the same issues we've fought so hard to overcome. Dr. Miller guided me through the complicated dynamics at play throughout the course of the following few sessions. My achievement jeopardized the family structure and the principles that my parents had based their lives on. My financial assistance, rather than eliciting appreciation, had sparked animosity by emphasizing a power shift they were unwilling to accept. Your father's identity is built around being the provider and authority, she told me. Your success challenges both roles. I began journaling, chronicling not just that horrific night, but also patterns throughout my upbringing. In subtle ways, my business zeal had been dampened. Times when intellectual achievements were honored, but commercial triumphs were downplayed. I was constantly reminded that without a degree, I would never be genuinely successful. This procedure demonstrated how thoroughly I had internalized these teachings. Despite my apparent success, a part of me still felt like the family failure, the dropout with something to prove. This explained my reluctance to openly reveal my accomplishments and ongoing financial assistance without acknowledgement. Lauren phoned 10 days after the disastrous meal. I let it go to voicemail. Claire, please call back. Dad feels horrible about what occurred. We all do. But you have to understand how it appeared. You come in and essentially flaunt off your money. It was disrespectful to the rest of us who had worked hard for our jobs. I erased the message. The plot surprise was stunning. I'd somehow become the villain for presenting the realities about my business after years of downplaying my accomplishment. Michael then texted, "Family is family. Let's get beyond this." There was no apology, only the assumption that I would accept my job and the treatment that came with it. 3 weeks later, I made a choice that felt both scary and freeing. I planned to value self-respect above destructive familial relationships. My new home would be the beach house I purchased as an investment property in Naples, Florida the previous year. Before leaving Ohio for good, I sent a letter to my parents. Dear Mother and Father, I have spent years seeking your acceptance and respect. I provided financial assistance for our family while downplaying my accomplishments to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. Despite creating a $24 million firm that helps to keep American manufacturing employment, I've been made to feel like the family failure because I chose a different route. When Dad referred to me as illiterate garbage and a lowlife, it exposed how you actually saw me. No amount of accomplishment can ever alter that impression. I can't continue to be in a relationship where my worth is determined on credentials rather than character and achievement. I'll always adore you both, but I need space for my own well-being. I hope that eventually we can repair our friendship on the basis of mutual respect. Love, Claire. I sealed it and shipped it myself. No response came. I had my executive assistant pack and transport my possessions from Ohio to Florida. I gave the majority of my furnishings and clothing to local organizations. I wanted a fresh start with little baggage. My firm could operate remotely, with periodic journeys back for essential meetings. I had established a strong leadership team that could handle day-to-day operations without my personal presence. As I boarded the plane to Florida, I had a strange combination of loss and liberation. The family I'd worked so hard to please was behind me, but so was the stress of seeking acceptance that I'd never get. Naples, Florida, welcomed me with bright sunshine and sea air, a stark contrast to the dismal Ohio winter I had left behind. My beach home was a contemporary two-story structure with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Gulf of Mexico, located on a peaceful stretch of beachfront. I'd only been there twice on brief holidays, so it seemed more like an elegant hotel than a home. Making this space completely mine became a type of therapy. I began on the main bedroom, replacing the generic beige bedding with handcrafted quilts from one of my Heartland-made craftsmen in North Carolina. The mass-produced art was replaced with original works by young American artists I discovered via the business. Every morning I awoke to the sound of waves and true creation all around me. The next step was to renovate the kitchen. I set up open shelves to showcase handcrafted ceramics from our Vermont and New Mexico suppliers. The utilitarian equipment remained, but colorful fabrics and locally produced wooden serving boards added warmth to the area. Routines become crucial. Each morning began with a dawn stroll down the beach, barefoot on the soft sand, gathering shells and watching dolphins. I discovered a small coffee shop managed by a Cuban-American family, and I became a regular. They welcomed me by name, not by order number. Running the business remotely was easier than I anticipated. Video conferencing replaced in-person meetings, and our systems ran efficiently without the daily drive or office interruptions. I was really more productive and made better judgments from my new quiet headquarters. After the first month, my executive team paid a 4-day visit to my seaside deck for strategy brainstorming. Several people commented on the good improvements they saw in my leadership style. "You seem more centered, Andrew," my operations director noted. "More confident in your decisions." He was correct. Without the continual pressure to seek family approval, my entrepreneurial instincts flowed more easily. I trusted my judgment without the specter of Dad's disapproval looming over every decision. Community participation became another anchor. I joined both the local Chamber of Commerce and a business women's networking organization. Unlike at home, where I downplayed my success, here I was forthright about my company and accomplishments. The respect came effortlessly, free of the baggage of who I had previously been. I befriended Natalie, the owner of a small art gallery, and she introduced me to her group of successful women in their 30s and 40s. They regarded each other based on current accomplishments, rather than historical qualifications. Our monthly dinner gatherings became highlights, full of laughter and talks that never featured queries about my degree, or hints that I'd struck fortunate. Michael arrived abruptly at my home on a Saturday afternoon, 4 weeks into my existence in Florida. "Nice place?" he exclaimed, whistling as he took in the seaside view from my living room. "Really nice." His presence was unsettling in my new refuge. He seemed out of place in his button-down shirt and ironed khakis amidst my relaxed seaside decor. "What brought you to Florida, Michael?" I inquired without offering a drink or a seat. "Family?" he answered with the same confident smile he'd used to dazzle our parents since we were kids. "And I could use some advice about an investment opportunity, possibly a loan to get in on the ground floor." With our parents not around, his facade immediately dissipated. This was strictly a financial visit. "I'm not making loans to family members anymore," I stated firmly. "That chapter is over." His visage darkened. "So that's how it is. You relocate to your beachfront house and forget where you're from. Dad was correct about you." "Dad labeled me illiterate garbage and booted me out of the house," I told him. "Is that what you're here to reinforce?" Michael backed away fast. He didn't intend it that way. You know how he gets. Family fights occur. That wasn't a fight. It was a revelation, I answered. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans this afternoon." After seeing him out, I sat on my veranda, watching the surf, remarkably unaffected by the meeting. The boundaries I was setting seemed proper, even though they were difficult to execute. That evening I took a crucial choice, called my lawyer, and established an anonymous scholarship fund at the community college where I had temporarily studied. The Claire Wilson Entrepreneurship Scholarship would offer complete tuition and support to 6 students each year who displayed entrepreneurial aptitude but lacked typical academic advantages. Make sure the selection criteria focus on demonstrated initiative and creative problem solving, not grades, I told you. And find mentors who've built actual businesses, not just taught business classes. Weeks slipped into months, and the anguish of family rejection faded from an acute wound to an old wounded that lingered every now and then. I was creating something new, not just a house, but a genuine existence based on my ideals rather than others' expectations. Then something unexpected occurred, bringing everything full circle. Natalie contacted me early one morning and insisted I pick up a copy of the Naples Business Journal, which I didn't generally read. Page 4. You're going to want to see this. There I was, shot on my terrace with the Gulf of Mexico behind me, with the title, E-Commerce Entrepreneur Brings Multi-Million-Dollar Enterprise to Naples. The writer had done her homework, outlining Heartland Made's rise from startup to $24 million value, our effect on American manufacturing, and my new entrepreneurial scholarship foundation. I didn't authorize this, I informed Natalie when she called to congratulate me. Public records, she said. Property transfers and business registrations. Once they knew you were here, the rest was simple. Besides, it's a terrific piece. She was correct. The article was well researched and complimentary, focused on professional achievements rather than personal strife. I didn't think much about it until the next week, when my phone began to light up with social media alerts. The piece was taken up by numerous bigger business journals and widely shared on LinkedIn and Facebook. Former high school classmates immediately recalled our friendship. Teachers stated they had always recognized my ability. The most startling letters came from small company owners in my hometown, congratulating me for demonstrating what was possible without pursuing established channels. You inspired me to finally launch my business, wrote a former student. If you could build something so substantial without a fancy degree, maybe my idea has merit too. The local newspaper back home even carried a shortened version with an extra angle. Local entrepreneur has national influence. The irony was not lost on me. The same community that had discreetly reinforced my parents' unhappiness suddenly recognized me as a hometown success story. My family eventually realized the full depth of my accomplishment as a result of the media's ripple effect. My cousin Emily sent the first friend request, which was followed by numerous additional extended family members who had previously exhibited little interest in my life. Mom then sent a text message. I noticed an article about your firm. Very amazing. Dad and I are quite proud. There is no mention of Dad's nasty statements, no acknowledgement of the schism. Just a casual display of pride, which had been noticeably lacking when I sat at their dinner table. Dad's voicemail arrived the next day, with an unnaturally cheery tone. Claire, there's major news about your firm in the press. I've always known you have it. There appears to have been a misunderstanding last time we spoke. Call me back as soon as you can. There was a misunderstanding. That was how he described calling his daughter illiterate garbage and kicking her out of the house. 4 days later, Mom texted again. We are thinking of going Florida next month. I would love to visit your new house. Let us know if it works for you. The message landed on my stomach like a stone. 6 weeks of mending, of creating a new life free of their judgment, and now they wanted to just show up at my door as if nothing had occurred. I did not answer promptly. Instead, I arranged an emergency appointment with Dr. Miller. You have several options, she said after hearing my worries. You may refuse the visit outright. You can agree, but create clear boundaries for what you will and will not discuss. Alternatively, you might consider this as a chance for open communication that could lead to healing. However, this needs their willingness to recognize the harm done. After considerable thinking, I texted Mom. You and Dad are welcome to visit, but we need to have an open discussion about what happened at his birthday dinner before we can proceed. Please let me know whether you're open to that type of talk. Her reaction was swift. Of course, dear. We just want to put this behind us and be a family again. The phrase bothered me, the desire to put it behind us without openly addressing it, but I confirmed the dates of their visit. As the day neared, I prepared physically and mentally. I planned for them to stay at a nearby hotel rather than my house, allowing me to maintain my personal space, and I role-played uncomfortable talks with Dr. Miller, practicing setting boundaries without becoming defensive. They came on a bright Tuesday afternoon. I met them for lunch at a seaside restaurant, which provided a public atmosphere to help temper the initial meeting. They appeared smaller, less threatening than they did in Ohio. Dad appeared to be losing confidence. Mom seemed more worried than I recalled. This place is something else, Dad exclaimed, pointing to the turquoise lake visible through the restaurant windows. You've done well for yourself, Claire. The small emphasis on yourself didn't escape me. Nor did the inference that my accomplishment existed outside of family values. Thank you, I said simply, without breaking the tense silence that ensued. Mom joined in with small conversation about their travel, the weather, and how different Florida was from Ohio. I answered pleasantly but did not contribute to the conversation. Finally, once our lunch arrived, Dad cleared his throat. About what happened at my birthday meal. You called me uneducated trash and a lowlife, I said gently. You told me to get out of your house and that my money didn't make me part of the family. His expression was irritable. I was startled to hear the news regarding your company. It took me off guard. I may have overreacted. This is not an apology, but an excuse. I need to understand, I said, keeping eye contact. Was that response to my revealing my accomplishment or to knowing I'd been assisting the family financially? Both, Mom interrupted. It felt like you were showing off, like you were saying you're better than us now. I never said or thought that, I told you. I spent years concealing my accomplishments to avoid making people uncomfortable. I contributed monetarily because I could and wanted to aid the family I adore. The conversation proceeded in this way throughout lunch. No true apology appeared, only explanations and attempts to downplay the gravity of what had occurred. The subtext became more evident. They were here because my public achievement made rejecting me socially unpleasant, not because they had changed their minds about my worth. As we completed our lunch, I came to a conclusion. I'd want to show you my house. But first I need to clarify something. I'm not going to pretend like dinner never occurred. I will not tolerate being called names or having my decisions criticized. If you want a relationship to progress, it must be built on mutual respect. They exchanged looks before Dad nodded stiffly. That seems reasonable. When they arrived at my beach property later that afternoon, their looks as they took in the magnificent ocean vista said it all. This physical evidence of my progress could not be dismissed or minimized. The $24 million worth was no longer an abstract figure, but rather reflected in coastal real estate and elegant elegance. This is quite something, Dad said, his voice tense. As I guided them through the house, pointing them the handcrafted artifacts from Heartland-made craftsmen that adorned each room, I realized something significant. Their acceptance, which I had desired for so long, no longer carried the same weight. I was proud of this home and the company that made it possible, regardless of how they reacted. That discovery was likely the most beneficial effect of their visit, worth more than any apology they could have given. We spent hours talking on the terrace as the sun sank over the Gulf. There was no spectacular reunion or sobbing group embrace instantly mend decades of misunderstanding. Instead, we struck a shaky agreement, a beginning point rather than a conclusion. Moving ahead, I said as the evening came to an end, I'm willing to restore our connection, but with clear limits. I won't accept being demeaned for my educational choices or having my success attributed to luck rather than hard work. They agreed, though I could tell Dad was hesitant in his tight grin and qualifying comments. Mom was more truly receptive, possibly realizing for the first time her involvement in facilitating the dynamics that had caused so much suffering. After they returned to Ohio, I thought on my stay and the road that had brought me here. The mending process was far from complete, but great progress had been made. In the months that followed, I had just brief weekly phone chats with my parents, which got less unpleasant with time. My connection with my siblings developed differently. Lauren ultimately made a real apology for her involvement in the family dynamics, and we gradually restored a relationship based on adult friendship rather than childhood habits. Michael stayed distant, occasionally sending holiday pleasantries but making no genuine attempt to comprehend or acknowledge the pain done. The most essential takeaway from all of this is that your worth is not defined by others' judgments, particularly those influenced by obsolete ideas or expectations. Success may take many different shapes, most of which are unexpected. Sometimes the most painful rejections lead to the most sincere and rewarding routes forward. 2.